Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this being Clay's Cornerstone podcast. This is episode 2, and just as I said in the last episode, this is going to be all about me. This is going to be my testimony from death to life. Because, my goodness, was I blind, but now I see. So, really, what I'd like to do is just kind of dive in. But first, let me give a disclaimer here. There may be some subject matter in this surrounding bullying, suicidal ideation, things like that, that will be touched on. And so if any of that is triggering to you, just know that going into this conversation here. And the other thing is I might leave out some names. I might leave out some people. Might leave out some events. Really, my goal here is just to get across God moving through my life, throughout my entire life. And so let me give you some background into me. And you'll notice also we got a little bit of a different setup. This is inside my bedroom. So we're super vulnerable today. It's my bedroom. This is my life story. And yeah, I think that's good. So let's dive in. I was born in 1998 in Ogden, and I've actually never lived more than 30 minutes away from like another house. So really from North Ogden to South Ogden, that is where I've been. That is where I've been my whole life. And I'm very grateful to have stayed in one place for so long and to have grown deep roots here. Super great. And a lot of I was actually just having a conversation with someone yesterday, and they were like, do you think you'll ever leave Utah? I was like, I doubt it. I mean, maybe, like, should God call me somewhere, sure, I'll go. But yeah, I like it here. Which is not the case for a lot of people. A lot of people will be like, oh, it's too boring, or there's not enough to do, there's not enough diversity, blah, blah, blah. And I don't know. Maybe it's because I've always been here that I like it. And I'm a homebody, so I love to stay where I'm at. I don't like moving, that's for sure. So yeah, born in 1998, and we'll just kind of dive in. I want to kind of separate this into some age ranges for you. So around 1 to 2, that is when my mom and dad were together. They broke up around the time that I was 2. They were engaged, and then ended up not being engaged anymore. So I, growing up, don't have any memories of like my mom and dad really interacting or anything like that outside of a hi at some family events or random happenstances at grocery stores and things like that. But that's really about it. And I think growing up I wasn't super bummed about it. It was just kind of what life was. And so moving forward from there, my first memories start around like 4 or 5. 6 is when I really have like some really solid memories where I'm like, oh, I know exactly, what I was doing on some of those days when I was that age. And then we get into 7 or 8, and this is where things get really big for me. So I was living with my grandparents and my dad at the time, and I'm in, 2nd and 3rd grade, and I'm just not developing like the other kids are. I'm short, and I'm not very athletic. I'm not very coordinated with my hands and my eyes, and so some bullying kind of starts, and this was really when I started getting self-conscious about a lot of different things. And this was, all in school that this was happening. There wasn't really a whole lot happening that was awful at home, especially living with my grandparents. Like, my grandparents loved me. So I was getting, whatever I wanted whenever I wanted. I kind of ran that place. It felt like looking back, it's just like I got whatever I wanted. I was so spoiled, and I was not grateful for that then. And so I kind of became a brat, and I was crying all the time whenever I didn't get my way. And so that was always interesting. So moving forward here a bit, my my dad starts going through some stuff that I kind of witness, and so he ends up not being at the house for a while, for a few months. So it's just me and my grandparents, and I visit my mom every so often because they're separated. So I kind of had moved back and forth a few times. I think I've moved total about 12 to 13 times, which when you're staying in Utah is a lot of times to move. If you're moving states, it's a little bit different. But I initially, was at my mom's house and then moved to my dad's house, which then we moved in with my grandparents. It was around this time that after, my dad got back into the house after he had worked through some of his issues, he starts dating this girl who would end up becoming my stepmom. And that was really interesting for me, and really hard as an adjustment for me, because it was just, it was always, me and my dad, and then my mom and my stepdad at the time, and my grandparents. That was my family, and my siblings as well. My siblings are kind of scattered. We're not going to get into too much of that because I want to keep this pretty condensed. But that was rough, because now what had happened was I developed one friend while I was living at my grandparents', my neighbor, and we were hanging out all the time, 24/7. We were just doing everything together, and now it was time to move because Dad's getting married, so we're moving. So we moved to North Ogden, and that was just kind of an abrupt change for me, especially where I'd be moving schools again. At this point I moved schools. I was in a school for kindergarten, and I was in daycare even before that. I don't remember any of that really, but so I've got a school in kindergarten. I move in first grade, and then I move again for second and third grade, and now fourth, fifth, and sixth grade was going to be spent elsewhere. So I moved schools, and it's at this school that I just kind of do my own thing. I privately I'd mind my own business, but I was also trying to get a lot of attention from the teachers and from other classmates and things like that. So I was the loud kid. I was the class clown. I was always getting into trouble. I was never doing any of my work, and things at home were hard because, again, I just had such a hard time adjusting to having a different family dynamic with my dad and my stepmom and my stepbrother, and then eventually two more siblings. The dynamic for me just kept shifting. And the good news is, let me say this as well, the good news is things are good now. Right? That's why this is a testimony from death to life. This is a testimony of how much I've grown and how much things have changed over the years. But during that time, that was really hard. And so it felt like home was hard, and it felt like school was hard, because the bullying continued regardless of what school I was at, just because, again, I was small, am small, and once kids found out my middle name, so my middle name's Ashley, and once kids found that out, oh boy, was that was that something for them to take on and pick on me for. So home didn't feel like home. School didn't feel like any developmental thing was happening. It just was, bullying. And the only reprieve I ever had from that was every other weekend going to my mom's, or every other weekend going to my grandma's, and hanging out with my neighbor that was there. So I had one friend. And then in school, I had a school friend, but we never did anything outside of school together. We were never allowed to really hang out with one another. And I just start being a pretty bad influence on him. And one thing, and I remember this really well, this was, I don't remember exactly when, I think it was 5th or 6th grade, but we're on the playground and kind of walking around the playground, just talking and stuff. And he just says, we have to stop being friends. My mom said that you're a bad example on me. And at this point, I had, been doing awful in school. Everyone knew that I was not a good student. Everyone knew that I was just a knucklehead and getting into some trouble here and there, and swearing all the time, and just, angry at people. So he picks up on that. He, obviously, you talk to your parents about who you're hanging out with at school and tell them about your day. And apparently, anytime I came up in a story, it was never good. Right? That's just the kind of kid I was. So he says we can't be friends anymore. And there was one distinctive difference I remember, and it's so interesting to me how like the brain of a child works now, that I think about this, because I didn't take it at face value with what he was saying. Because what he was saying was, you're a bad example. I talked to my parents about you. Mom said, you're done talking to Clay. There was one distinctive difference that we had, and it was that he was religious and I was not. I did not go to church every Sunday. There were times where, my aunt, who would watch some of the kids at my house, we would go with her to this LDS church, and I just did not like it, but that's a whole other kind of can of worms to get into. But that was the distinctive thing that I remember being different about us. We had everything else in common. We had all the same hobbies, all the same interests, all the same, feelings about things. To me, the only difference between us was that he is religious and I'm not. And growing up in Utah, especially in like public school, if you're not churched or anything, you really grow up with the mentality of you're either Mormon or you're nothing. And so it was then that I just kind of took on that thing of like, oh, he can't hang out with me because I'm not Mormon or because I'm not religious. That was what I took on. He had not said any of that in his words. And so I'm just like, well, shoot, that really sucks. I guess I can never be friends with anyone who's religious, right? So I lose my friend at school, and things just kind of continued declining from there. The bullying continues. Home life doesn't feel like an escape. It doesn't feel like home. And so my dad starts begging the question, well, why are you doing so bad in school? Why are things just not working, right? It's around 7th grade that really before this too, that we were asking these questions and trying to figure this out of like, does Clay have ADD? Does Clay have ADHD? Because he just can't seem to focus. He can't seem to do something. He can't seem to do one thing long enough. And he can't seem to get his grades up. He can't seem to work through some of these behavioral things. Excuse me. So what is going on? What is going on there? So I start seeing, I don't know if it was, I don't know anything about therapy. I don't know if it was a therapist, a psychiatrist, I don't know. But I'm talking to some professional about this. And I'm going in there thinking, what if? And this oh my gosh. We're getting vulnerable today. I'm thinking, what if I can use these conversations to my advantage? What if I can blow things out of proportion to where he thinks that my home life is so bad? Because it wasn't as bad as I felt it was, right? Because when you're a kid, you magnify all of those feelings. And this is something I'm learning as an adult now, just as I reflect on some of this stuff. I'm like, what if I figure out a way to blow things out of proportion and explain my home life as so bad, as so destructive? It wasn't super healthy, I would say, but it wasn't destructive in the way that I described to this man that I was talking to. I'm going to say therapist. We'll say therapy. And so the reason I wanted to do that was because then I could potentially go back and live with my mom, because things weren't bad there, and I could move schools again. I'd get a fresh start, and maybe I could make some old friends that I kind of had back in 2nd and 3rd grade, because that's the area she was living in, and so I'd end up going to a school that was like that if things would work out. So I lie to this therapist. And I don't know how much he picked up on that. I don't know how much Again, I just don't know how therapy works. But what I do know is what ended up being prescribed and what ended up happening. I'm diagnosed with ADD from there, and I get put on a medication. And so I'm on this medication, and then I start having just depressive thoughts. Like, things get really bad. It felt like home life got worse and worse and worse, and school life got worse and worse and worse. The medication was not helping. I was sleeping all the time. I was just in my room all the time. I was grounded consistently, every day. Didn't really have friends to talk to, and then anytime it was me going to my mom's house or me going to grandma's house, you just put on a mask and pretend like everything's okay. And it's halfway through 7th grade, just before Christmas break, which was for us the break in the semester. So it's the end of the semester that I'm just thinking to myself, like, I need to take my own life. And I come up with a whole plan to do it. I know exactly what I'm going to do and everything. And this is one of those moments for me where I don't know if I visualized it so much that it actually happened, or if I actually was in this moment. But from what I remember, was I was just like, this is going to get graphic, I'm just going to jab a knife into my neck. That's going to be the surefire way to do it, And I just remember getting ready to do that, and then just crying. And it was like a deposit of a thought, like an airdrop with Apple, with iPhone. It's like an airdrop came into my brain and communicated to me, wait 1 week. So I'm like, okay, yeah, I should wait. A week later, it's Christmas time. And it was a normal Christmas. I start off at my dad's, go to my mom's. We do Christmas there that evening, and something's off with me. And I'm in my room playing video games with my stepdad, which, was a normal thing for us to do. But I'm different. I'm not in it. I'm not excited about it. I'm not doing anything really. And he just stops the game. And he says, "Are you okay?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm fine." 12 years old at this time. And he says, "No, are you okay? Like, you seem off." And I just looked him in the eyes and I was like, "No, I'm not okay." And I start kind of talking to him about what's going on, and he's like, "We got to tell your mom." So we go talk to my mom, and she's like, "You're not going back to that school. You're not going back to that house. And you're done taking that medication." So I move. We're not going to get into all the family drama that ensued from there. But I move. And I'm at my mom's house for the rest of 7th grade, so I go to a different junior high. And my first thought is, okay, this is a chance to start over. I have to find friends. I have to. And maybe I could find some of the people that I knew from when I was at that other school back in 2nd and 3rd grade. Because I remember some of their names. I had that yearbook, and so, you go through that yearbook and you just have these names just in your brain forever. So I find one. I'm like, I need to find Braden. I need to find Colton. So I find them. and they have a group. And this group, we called ourselves the Crew. Pretty cool. And this group was the group of bullies. This group was the group of kids that got in trouble all the time. And the thing for me was just I have to make friends. I'm so desperate to make friends at this point in my life that it just has to work out. And these friends specifically, like, I just had it in my brain, like, these friends have to work out. Because I don't know what I'll do if it doesn't, right? I can't go back to not having friends. So we start bullying some kids. We start getting into a lot of trouble. It became a regular thing for me to walk into school, get started with the day, the first period bell rings, and for me and or some of my friends to get called into the office just right away for whatever we did the previous day. That was a constant thing. My grades were not good. They're doing better due to some expectations that were set in place. But really, I just, nothing was changing. I wasn't depressed anymore because I was taking a lot of that out on people. So instead of being bullied, I now became a bully. And this moment changed my life. And I think about this moment all the time. And and there is a resolution to this. And it starts bad, and I promise it ends up being resolved. We bully this kid so bad on a Friday that over the weekend, and we didn't know this until Monday, obviously, but over the weekend he had tried to commit suicide, and his mom stopped him. So Monday, we come into school. Me and my friends get called into the office. And there is the principal. And there's this woman who I've never seen before. And she starts telling us this event that happened over the weekend where this kid tried to take his own life. And the mom intervened. And normally, like, it was something, I don't know, I feel like it was something ingrained in me at a young age of do not apologize until you're actually sorry. Like, show that you're sorry when you apologize. Because they'll know it's fake if you don't mean it. And I'm sitting there, and this truly was the first moment that I learned empathy and sympathy. Where I had put someone through something that I had been through, and I wanted to take my own life, and I knew how that felt. I knew that feeling. And so I just have a complete breakdown. And she asks us to apologize to the mom, and obviously the kid doesn't want to talk to us at all. He's just not ready for that. So we end up not talking to the kid for the rest of junior high. That was it. So we never had any resolution then. But the resolution comes later. So now I'm thinking, like, wow, we caused that. We caused that to happen, and I feel terrible about it. And maybe these friends that I found are just not good. I found the wrong friends. So some time passes, and I'm still in this friend group because it's just what I know. We move into 8th grade, and about halfway through 8th grade, there's not a whole lot of people left to bully if they're gonna snitch. Like, that was our thing. Like, we cannot bully a snitch, because the last time we bullied a snitch, we got suspended, almost expelled for what we did. And then the group turns on me because I'm the runt of the crew. So I'm back to being bullied. And today, I thank God that the depression didn't come back from this. I really think the depression was just from the medication. I think it was a side effect of that. Because it's not been like that since. But I hated it. It's pretty easy to hate bullying, especially when you're being bullied. So I was like, this sucks. They bully me so bad. There was this moment where it was just this awful thing that was done to me, where I was like, yeah, I'm done. I can't be with them anymore. I need to tell my mom about this. My mom ends up calling the school, figuring out a way for us to kind of be divided and for us to never have to communicate. And what is so interesting about this is I'm sure that that's what happened. I know that that's what happened with the kid that we bullied, and his mom, because they communicated with the school. And so it's interesting because I knew that that was a possibility, because I had seen it done before of, oh, hey, we actually totally avoided that kid for the rest of junior high. Like, I don't remember a single conversation with him in junior high. That was it, and so I get out of this group, and two of my friends come with me, and one of them is still my friend to this day. His name is Matt, and I love Matt. Matt, if you're watching this, I love you, dude. You stuck with me, and we're still friends today. He's one of my best friends. So we leave this group, we start doing our own thing, we mind our own business, grades start improving, life starts improving, things are just different. Like, oh my goodness. Things were very different from there. He unfortunately moved to a different school district, not too far away, so we're still hanging out, 3 times a week. Like, we're playing video games every night together, online, and that was just our friendship. So flash forward to sophomore year. I'm just minding my own business. I'm in high school now. I'm doing my own thing. I really don't want to get in trouble again. Like, that, it kind of put me on this, like, the straight and narrow. And I also really thank God for this as well. I think there was a certain protection on me through junior high and high school, where I never was invited to any parties. I heard about them. All my friends went to them. A lot of my friends were drinking, doing drugs, and things like that, and I just never got invited. I don't know what it would have been like had I been invited. But there was also just this thing ingrained in me of, like, if mom found out, I'm dead. There was just the fear of my mom, where I'm like, man, we gotta make sure we don't get in trouble, right? And it was a good fear. It wasn't super crazy. She wouldn't beat me. It was just, I just didn't want to get in trouble. I didn't want to get grounded. I didn't want my video games to be taken away. That was the worst thing you could do to me. If you take my video games away, that was when I throw a fit. And I turned back into that 7-year-old, that didn't want my food touching on the plate. Like, I just start bawling, break down. So, yeah, high school was pretty uneventful until at the end of junior year. Junior year, I decide, okay, I'm going to be a graphic designer. I love graphic design. I took a class on it. I'm like, yeah, let's do this. And I'm talking with one of the school counselors, and the school counselor is just like, hey, if you go to this tech college that's just right here, you can have it all paid for by the school, because you'll still be in high school. It'll be a little bit of extra work, but we can work out your schedule in a way to where you're kind of getting credit for that, and we pay for it. I was like, sweet, that's a great deal. So my A days were spent in senior year. My A days were spent at the high school, and then my B days were spent at this tech college. So over the summer, I'm doing these classes, going into senior year at the tech college, or class, I should say. It's one class. And I'm eating lunch alone every single day. And I'm just like, this sucks, somehow through high school, like I would just, in high school at lunchtime, I would just go sit with some random people to at least have someone to sit with, during that time. And there were a few school friends that I'd picked up here and there that I was comfortable around and would sit with. But it never got a whole lot closer than that, I'd say. It was all pretty superficial friendships. And so anyway, I'm like, this sucks. Sitting alone every day for lunch. I hate this. Senior year starts, and my old friend, Colton, is in the lunchroom. So let's flash back for a second, because this is really important. In junior high, Colton and I got into a fight. This was while we were both in the crew. And here's what went down. The hallways at this junior high were so long. They were massive. They were ridiculously long. And there was a common joke that I had said to him that I would just shout at him all the time. And I knew he was fed up with it. I knew he didn't like it. But I thought it was the most hilarious thing in the world. So I just kept doing it all the time. Anytime I'd see him, that's how I would greet him. Okay? And so I'm at the end of this hallway. He's at the very end on the other side. And I just yell. I yell this thing to him. And I see his head poke up through the sea of junior high students. So I had obviously gotten his attention. And I get to my class. The door wasn't unlocked yet because the teacher hadn't gotten back from wherever she was at. Excuse me. So he comes down the hallway. And he pushes me into the door. This is my side of the story. He pushes me into the door. And I'm like, oh, we're doing this now. So we get in a tussle. And the tussle really was us just hitting each other in the most sensitive spot that you can hit a man. And I drop. After we take turns doing this, I drop. I'm crying on the floor. He goes away. I end up composing myself, and it's time for class. The teacher ends up getting there, and we're good to go. So I tell all my friends at lunch, Colton can't take a joke. Here's what happened. We got to kick him out of the crew. So he tries to sit down with us, and we boo him. We make him go so far away. So he goes and sits with some other people, and that was really the end of our friendship at that point. So I see him in this lunch line, and I'm like, I haven't talked to him really since junior high. I mean, maybe in passing through the hallways, eventually, once I got out of the group, we were kind of fine with each other in the hallways. There wasn't anything big or anything crazy. No conversations that we ever had, I don't think. And on my A days, I have English class with him. So I see him A day and B day. And I start sitting next to him during English. So we start, kind of chatting a little bit, and I see him at the tech college in the lunch line, and I'm just like, look, I'm just going to ask if I can sit with him. So I go up to him, and I'm like, hey, can we sit together? Because I'm so sick of sitting alone for lunch. He's like, sure. So we start becoming friends. Really good friends. And similar to my friendship with Matt, we just play video games every night together, and that was us growing up with one another and just doing that. Like, we could talk about anything while we were playing video games. We were rarely talking about the video games themselves. We were talking about life while we're playing these video games, which is just the funniest thing to me. My allergies are acting up. So we grow that, and eventually in this in our lunchtime together, he just asked me, he's like, dude, what happened in junior high? Why did you kick me out of the friend group? He's like, that ruined me for a while. That sucked. That hurt. And this was like a few months into us being friends again. And I'm like, listen, here's what happened. And obviously we're past this now, right? We're almost adults at this point. So we're past this. And he's like, that's not what happened. So, so I'm like, wait, what happened? What was your side of the story? And he said, I heard you shout something from the end of the hallway. I didn't hear what it was. I just heard you say my name and then something else. And so I started walking down the hallway to come talk to you. And this guy, he says the name of who pushed him. He says, this guy pushed me into you. And once he said the name, I was like, of course he pushed you into me. That's what this kid did. He was just always causing things like that in the hallways. So he's like, this guy pushed me into you. And then you started fighting me. I was like, oh my gosh. I can't believe that we stopped being friends over that. Over just this weird, like, crazy misunderstanding. But now we have a chance to be friends again. Like, now we are friends again. Now we are growing this friendship with one another. And we love spending time together. Like, we love playing video games together. We love just talking about life and things like that. And one thing that didn't come up often, but often enough to where I knew it was a thing, was that he goes to church. Some of you see where this story's going. He goes to church. I didn't really understand what it was. I knew it wasn't Mormon, but I didn't. Again, growing up in Utah, it's like, you're Mormon, or there's not really any other options. is the thinking that you have. So I'm like, I know it's a church, but it's probably weird. It's probably dumb. But he's a cool enough guy. And anytime we're playing video games on a Saturday night, he'd be like, well, I have church in the morning. He'd be like, I need to do the sound for the church. I need to do the slides for the church. I need to be up to get to church in the morning, blah, blah, church. And so I would just berate him for this. I did not treat him well anytime something like that came up, for obvious reasons. Because I was an atheist. And I was like the proud atheist. Like once I discovered that there was a term for... once I discovered atheist was a term, I was like, that is me. That's my identity. That's who I am. What do atheists do? And I do that. What do they say? And I'll say that. What are some of these one-liners that I can shut down these Jesus believers? So that was me. So I'm doing that with him. And eventually it gets to a point where it's time for me to just start thinking, well, why is he still friends with me, right? And we'll get back to that, because in between all of this, some interesting things had developed. After we graduate, I get a girlfriend, my first girlfriend. I did it. I made it as a human being now that I have a girlfriend. Yes. That was my thinking. The first 2 months were great, and then the last 2 months, not super great. We were fighting all the time, arguing all the time. Seemed like our lives were not going in the same direction, right? And so I'm kind of like, hey, I don't know if this should continue because of some of the not straight and narrow things that your friends are engaging in, and you might go down that same path, and I ain't about that, because Mama raised me different. I follow the law. So I'm having these thoughts about this relationship while I'm playing video games online with Colton. So I have a headset on just like this, and we're playing video games, and I just get this feeling of like I just have to break up with this woman. Unless she changes. If she changes, great. If she won't, and I don't think she will, then we gotta break up. So I text her. I'm like, hey, can you come over? I want to talk about something. Blah, blah, blah. And I take off the headset, and just before I do that, I'm like, hey, guys, I'll be right back. I don't even tell them what I was doing. And I go upstairs, go out to my porch. I tell my mom and my stepdad on the way that I was going to probably break up with if this conversation didn't go well. I just said her name. I'll bleep out her name. That's funny. I got to break up with this girl, right? So now I lost my place. So I go out to my porch, and we're talking, and she just starts not receiving this very well. And she's just like, I'm not changing for anybody. She starts cussing me out. And some neighbors were outside that day. It was a spring day. So people were outside hearing this and seeing this go down. And then she gets in her car and she leaves. So I go back inside, feeling just a sense of like, oh, I'm actually like, I'm kind of free from that now. Because that relationship just wasn't good for me. And it actually took some counseling to get through that and realize that. Before I even broke up with her, I started doing some counseling, and we're backtracking again a little bit. I could not stop thinking about how I treated people in junior high. You know, like, I wasn't a good dude. Like, I was an a-hole. But I wasn't like that much of an a-hole as an adult now. But boy, was I bad in junior high, and I just couldn't get past some of that. So I'm thinking about it, and I'm just like, I can't even forgive myself for some of this stuff that I did. And I can't forgive some of these other people for what they did to me. But I'm really beating myself up. So I end up going on social media, and I find that kid that I just couldn't stop thinking about. I find that guy, and I send him just this long message. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. It was stupid. And I don't even remember if I told him how it affected me. But the gist was there. Of, I can't stop thinking about this. Please forgive me and release me from thinking about this. Because I'm a different person now. I promise. I promise I'm a different person now. And he forgives me. What a good dude. Man. His message back to me was beautiful, and I'm crying. And I'm in between some counseling sessions. It was like, I think I did 2 sessions with this guy. One before this, one after this. And the one after this was where I'm just like, yeah, I'm breaking up with this girl. So, that's the resolution of the guy that we bullied in junior high. I'm glad that I'm forgiven for that. And I've since forgiven all of the people that were involved in that also had hurt me. So that was a beautiful resolution to that. So we break up, me and this girl. I go back downstairs to my room, and I throw back on the headset. And they're like, "Where did you go? You were gone for a minute. We thought you went to the bathroom or something." And I'm like, "Oh, me and this girl broke up." And my friend Colton is just like, "Wait, you left, broke up with your girlfriend, and now you're just back playing video games?" I was like, "Yeah, that's not a big deal." Oh man, that's still funny to me. It gets me every time I think about that. And he's like, "Do you want to talk about it?" I said, "No, I'm pretty good. I feel like I resolved it. We're fine." And he says, "Do you want to go get milkshakes?" And I am a sucker for milkshakes. Holy cow. Is that all you like? Do you want to get milkshakes? Those 6 words, that question alone, I love you, if you ever ask me that. That's how low the bar is. That's all you have to say is, "Do you want a milkshake?" And boom, I'm there. So we go get milkshakes, and he's kind of talking about his girl problems that he's going through, because I didn't want to talk about anything that I was thinking about. And then he just, as he's talking about all this, I'm like, okay, hold on a second. And I just explode with all the issues I had in this relationship. I just unload all of it onto him, which I think was his goal. Well done, Colton. I unload, and that grew our friendship exponentially. Just him being there for me through that. So, our friendship continues even better than it was before. I respect him so much. But I still dig at him for the religion thing, for the church thing. And one day he ends up telling me about his friends that are starting a podcast about movies and comics and nerd stuff and video games. And I was just like, oh man. I said, Colton, I don't care what you have to do. You get me on that podcast. Like, you talk to them, figure it out. It has to happen. I'm desperate for my voice to be heard on a podcast. So he tells them, and we end up figuring something out. And I go to this church where they filmed their podcast. They filmed in the sanctuary for a few episodes. So I'm in this log cabin looking church that is nothing like what I had been to before, because I'd really only been to like an LDS ward before, and like sacrament meetings. And so I'm just looking at this, I'm like, this is not a church, like this is a cabin. And I see this sign in the sanctuary that says, love God, love people, it's that simple. The old phrase that we've all heard thousands of different ways: love God, love people, right? It's our big thing as Protestant, evangelical Pentecostals, right? We love that. I see that and I'm just like, I've never heard of religion condensed like that. That's kind of cool. I respect it. So then grows my respect for the church. And these guys that I'm hanging out with, oh my gosh, they were so great. My best friend, Nate, he's on this podcast. And we're just, I was just like gravitated towards him because we just could talk about the same things all the time. We could talk about movies, comics, all this stuff. And so I just like am kind of at the point where I'm just like, I'm gonna self-insert myself into this podcast, and I'm just gonna keep showing up every week, and I'm just gonna keep asking when they're recording and if I can be there. And so I just stick around. Like, they could not get rid of me. And so it ends up, becoming like me and Nate just doing this podcast alone later on. But in between this time, Nate hears that I went to school for graphic design, and at this point I wasn't doing anything with that graphic design certification, but he heard about it, and so he tells one of the pastors about it, who's kind of in charge of getting like the creative things together, like series art and things like that, for sermons. And he ends up sending my info over to this guy Adam. And Adam, ends up meeting with me at the church, and he says, hey, we just want to see if you're willing to do some series art for us. And I'm like, what is a series? He's like, well, it's for sermons. Like, it's a collection of sermons that you do over the course of a certain amount of time, blah, blah. And I'm like, what's a sermon? And I think he had that realization of, I know who I'm talking to now. And so he, gives me the workings of a Sunday, and what a service looks like, and what a sermon is, and some previous things that they had done. And I was like that pretentious graphic designer. I still am when I design things, or I'm just like, I have to understand everything about the message that this is gonna bring across, and blah blah blah. And so I'm just asking questions about what is this sermon series about, what are the sermons that are in it, what does the art need to look like, and things like that. And so I draw a little sketch, and I hand it to him, and my sketches are awful, but this was a simple one. And here's why. The series was called Simple But Not Easy, and it was about how Christianity and its principles, what you're doing, the love God, love people method, like, it's simple. However, it's not easy to love God, and it's not easy to love people. So, because it goes against what we're naturally, made to do, as living in a fallen world, I should say. So, I'm like, sure. And I'm thinking I'm going to get paid at this point. Still haven't gotten paid for it, which is just, like, that was my thinking, right? Was, this is going to be a job. And this is an opportunity for me to work for these people. And that, so I end up submitting that, and I become friends, and eventually along the road, I just tell Colton, I'm like, dude, I don't treat you very well. I make fun of the most important thing in your life all the time. Why are you still friends with me? And he says, Clay, I just think it's what Jesus would do. Like, I just know that's what I'm supposed to do as a Christian, is be friends with you and love you. And I'm just like, well, shoot. My next question was, what is this Jesus stuff about? Because I don't understand it. I thought I did. I thought it was stupid, and now I'm just wondering that. And he says, will you come to church with me tomorrow? Because I don't know how to explain it all to you. But will you come to church? So I was like, let me think about that. I said, let me go ask my mom. We're online playing video games. I said, let me go ask my mom. I go upstairs to my mom's room, and I'm like, hey, Mom, what would you think if I went to church? And the reason I was asking my mom was a very specific reason. It was for her to shut me down. It was for her to say no. Because any dumb idea I've ever had, Mom's like, no, don't do that. That's stupid. So I'm expecting this to be a dumb idea. And I go up to her and I'm like, hey, what do you think if I went to church with Colton tomorrow? And she says, I don't care. I'm like, Mom, that's not what you're supposed to say. I was pretty frustrated after that. So I go back downstairs, put the headset back on, and I just respected this guy too much to say no. I really did. So I say, what do I wear? He says, what are you wearing right now? Which is a funny question to ask someone online. So I'm like, I'm wearing a Star Wars shirt and some basketball shorts. And he says, okay, cool, come in that. And I'm like, oh, okay. I see what you're saying. I get it. It's casual. And there was a moment, probably a month before this, maybe even a couple weeks before this. We're going to our friend's house to play some card games and stuff. And on the way there, Nate is like, Clay, if you have any questions about Jesus, like if you have questions about church or anything like that, this guy at this house, his name is Joe, like, talk to Joe, and he's like getting his master's or whatever in theology and New Testament studies, so he's your guy. Talk to Joe if you want to. So we get into this house, and my first thought is, I have to find Joe, because he was our friend's brother that we're going to play with, play games with. And so I see this guy, and I'm like, hey, are you Joe? He's like, yeah. I said, will you tell me just the story of Jesus? And he just he kind of lights up, and he's ready to go. So we sit down, and he tells me the whole story of Jesus. Which I didn't think was going to be this long. It was a long conversation. We ended up, I think we didn't play games that night, or we just didn't play a whole lot. But it was a long conversation. At the end of it, I was kind of like, oh, maybe there's something here. Like, there's more to this story than I thought there was. This guy is making it sound historical. Like, he's making it sound like it actually happened. That's kind of different. I always thought it was a legend or a fable, or Jesus was some sort of myth, or multiple, stories from throughout the Middle East that kind of got combined and named under one guy. Like, I was that guy that was like, oh, it's all stories and blah, blah, blah. Good Samaritans, and they called him Jesus. All of them. All of the Good Samaritans were Jesus. That was my thought. If he was real. So, it's time to go to church. For the first time in my adult life, I'm going to a church. And I'm blown away. There's music. Everyone's welcoming. And I already knew a few people because I had kind of done some sermon stuff, sermon art work. And it felt really good. I felt welcomed. I felt at home. So Colton asks the question at the end of service, do you think you'll come back? I said, well, I'm going to Michigan for a week for a family trip. And then once I get back, I think we're starting the series that I helped create the art for, Simple But Not Easy. So I should at least see what that's about, you know. Me trying to disguise that I actually do want to come back. So he's like, okay. So I go to Michigan. And on the plane ride there, a deposit, an airdrop of a thought comes into my brain. And it says, think of every coincidence in your life. Think of everything that lined up together that just fit so perfectly that, like, you don't even know how to explain. And there was one that I could not get out of my head. It was Colton. So here we go. Let me thread the needle here on this thought. It blew my mind when I thought about this. 2nd and 3rd grade. One of the only kids that didn't bully me, Colton. 7th grade. Who am I looking for at school? Colton. I push him away. Then high school. College. Tech college stuff. Who do I see at the lunch line? Colton. Now here's the interesting thing about going to this tech college. I had 2 tech college options. There's the Davis Technical College and the Ogden Technical College. From my house that I was at the time, they were the exact same, what's the word? It's not distance, but the time to get there was the same. 17 minutes to get there. I'm working it out with my school counselor. He's like, hey, which one do you want to go to, the Davis one or the Ogden one? Like, we're fine with whatever. We send kids, you know, to whichever one they prefer based on where they live. I'm like, well, it's pretty much 6s from there. And so I'll just go based on the miles because I'm trying to save gas. I'm trying to keep the miles low on my car before it, you know, falls apart. So I pick the Ogden one based on just like a mile difference. And so I'm thinking about that difference. I'm like, the only reason I chose that was just because it was a little bit closer. And it just so happens he's now going here. And then he reconciles with me on the junior high stuff. And we become friends. And he introduces me to his friends. And he just loves me enough to stay friends with me even though I don't treat him very well. Huh. That's interesting. So the week passes. I'm still thinking about a lot of this stuff. And on the plane ride back, another airdrop of a thought comes in. That coincidence, every coincidence that you've ever had, replace that with God and see if that makes sense. And it was like I just realized that God, for my whole life, has been playing chess to get me to this moment. He has been moving these pieces around in ways that I never thought could happen or should happen, and I'm right here thinking about this, realizing that this is all true. So out loud, I don't remember if this was under my breath or if the plane was just loud, but I swear, because I'm frustrated that I've been wrong. And I know that once I get back to Utah, once this plane lands, I'm going to go to church shortly after. I think it was the next day I went to church. I'm going to go to church the next day, and things are going to be different. And I don't know what's going to be different. That's very scary, but it's time. So I go to church with Colton. We drive there together so that I'm comfortable. And we sit in the back so that I'm comfortable. And there's this Irish pastor giving a message. I understood every 4 words. because I just wasn't used to the accent. But prior to this, worship was interesting. These lyrics come up on screen, and I'm reading them because now I'm paying attention. This is my second time, so I should start figuring out what they're saying, what they're talking about. And the words on the screen says, "When I was your foe, still your love fought for me." When I was your foe, still your love fought for me. So I start doing some self-examination, and the immediate thought is just, am I the foe? Like have I been the enemy this entire time, and God has been fighting for me to be right here? I couldn't think of anything other than, yeah, it's exactly what's happening. It's exactly what's going on right here. So then there's the message, and I don't remember too much of what was said. It had to do with the simple but not easy concept, and I'm thinking about that, and I'm just like, I just really respect this, and it seems like it's legit. So then there's an altar call. And at my church, altar calls are not all too common. Which, when I was there, I for that second time, I was like, oh, this is a normal thing. Altar calls happen all the time. He does a salvation altar call, where he's like, hey, if you want to, accept this, and if you feel like this resonates with you, and, this is for you, come up here and let me pray for you. So, I'm just kind of thinking, and this, to this day, I mean, this was 6 years ago almost. To this day, I don't know if this was spiritual. I don't know if this was a physical sensation. I just know it happened. I don't remember getting up. I don't remember getting up out of my seat, walking out of the row, into the aisle, and halfway down the aisle. But it was like I blacked out or something. Or I just, I don't remember this moment. But I'm halfway up the aisle. And I had to walk far because I'm sitting in the back. So I'm halfway up. I get to the altar. I kneel down. He starts praying. And the moment he starts praying, I just feel imbued and just infiltrated by something. And that was spiritual for sure. So the Holy Spirit enters me. And this void that I didn't know was there was now filled. And I just, it clicked. A switch flipped on, and I was like, this is it. This is everything. And that was the moment. That was the moment for me. From there came a lot of questions. And I'm so thankful that I've been in a church that allows for questions, that allows for conversation and discussion around these things. And that also calls me into a family, a church family that loves me and wants to disciple me and wants to grow with me. So, that's my salvation. That's when it happened. And I'm so... Jesus, thank you. Thank you, Jesus, for that. It is a beautiful testimony. It's amazing. I'm so glad that I get to share it with people now, and have been. I'm just so glad I have this story, this testimony, and it's all glory to God for saving me through some stuff, for sparing me from some things, and getting me to that moment. Right, second time I go to church, I'm responding to an altar call. Wow. So, gosh, I mean, that's my favorite story. If anyone was like, what's your favorite story from your life? That's it. That's my favorite story. That's the best thing that ever happened to me. That was the biggest miracle. I mean, salvation is the biggest miracle of all time. And I'm just so thankful for it. So thank you for listening to this story. Thank you for listening to this testimony and just everything that God has done to get me to that moment. Again, this was 6 years ago, so in the next podcast, and I've thought about this too, in the next podcast I really want to dive into what has the last 6 years looked like for me. How did I get to where I'm at now? And what is a specific lesson that I've learned through that I really want to impart onto you guys listening to this, and really where I want you guys to go with this. I'm gonna sign off here, and just know, like, I love you. Thank you for listening to this. I am so appreciative that you would stick with me through this whole story. Maybe you listen to it at 1.5 speed. That's cool too. Sometimes I can speak a little slow. Sometimes I can speak a little fast. Anyway, before I sign off, just know one other thing. The Eat the Scroll Challenge is coming up July 1st. You can find more details about that at clayscornerstone.com/eat-the-scroll. So clayscornerstone.com, go there, click on the Eat the Scroll tab. You'll find the details, the reading plan, everything there. And I'm also going to be making a video just about what it is, what to expect, and some of the not ground rules that there are, because there's not rules for this. And I'll answer some questions that maybe you've had as I've kind of talked about this Eat the Scroll Challenge. So, yeah. I'll be making another podcast soon, diving into more, and I hope that you would join me in that. Please subscribe just to be notified when the next upload happens. You can follow me on social media at Clay's Cornerstone on Instagram, and that should be about it. So, clayscornerstone.com. We'll see you in the next one. I love you guys. Peace.